I'll be with someone and there's like ritualistic, ceremonial, mystical experience that's happening, and someone is not able to drop in. They don't have the spaciousness. They don't have the nervous system regulated to feel safe enough to be able to let the boundaries dissolve and to see what that moment has for them, to imprint on them.
The degree of my connection to what I'm anticipating in the future can be incredibly helpful and healthful if it's spiritually aligned with cause and effect of physics. Or is this a construct of my mind that's been baked in by a certain someone or something in that story, and that's what's holding me back? Am I actually in that spirit-centric vantage point of knowing what is my highest calling right now and feeling through my heart?
We come at everything with this default, heavily conditioned extractionist attitude, meaning, what am I going to get out of it? What's in it for me? No, it's the complete opposite. It's how can I deliver myself in total surrender?
Just turn down that physical mind, have even more trust, put even more faith into the heart, and listen, really listen for the intuitive guidance.
Having that regular practice is so crucial because we have to be able to continuously work with repatterning the nervous system so we're able to drop in. Like, why is it that we keep grasping? Because we don't have faith. Why do we keep thinking that we need to control? Because we don't have faith.
Welcome to the Ascend podcast. I have an incredible episode for you today with the one and only Aubrey Bamdad. Most incredible, magnificent person. She's got a bio that goes about 12 pages long, so I'm going to put that at the beginning. So we're going to jump right in with this beautiful soul. Aubrey, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on, Tyler. How are you?
Incredible.
Happy
Feel
to be drinking
blessed
tea
and
with you.
honored. Likewise.
It's mutual. It's absolutely mutual. So I was sitting the other morning in my practice, as I do every day. And for me, it's really about the cultivation of spaciousness. And I had, we'd been like trying to do this call for like a few months now. And I kept having to postpone it, which I really appreciate your flexibility. And so I thought, what are we going to jam about? What are we going to talk about? And what's happened to me a lot over the last couple of years is I've stopped having to think about how to figure it all out. And all I do is just simply drop in to spaciousness and it arises. And so this is what happened the other day with what I'd love to share with you today on Ascend. So I'm really very honored and super stoked to be here with you. So the thematic that I thought you and I would be perfect to converse about is the medicine of transformational experience. What is that exactly, right? So I'll give you an example. So as you know, I'm the CEO of Argos Destinations. This is a holistic luxury travel atelier. And we are actually doing an interview with someone in New Zealand who's an astrologer and a plant medicine person. And the topic of the interview that is being conducted, it's happening right now, is redefining and reframing luxury and abundance. So I woke up thinking about this morning, really like, what does luxury mean, and how much of our collective understanding of luxury is conditioned by, say, like a 1980s socioeconomic kind of context, and how much of that is like limited to expanding what we understand by luxury, right? So I got up this morning and I do what I do every single morning, which is the first thing I do is I get my dogs and I go out on the land and I play fetch with them and I watch the sunrise and I sun gaze. And I was thinking to myself, it's such a luxury, which I've thought on a lot of occasions, it's such a luxury to do this, to breathe this oxygen rich air in the Peruvian Amazon, to not see a soul while I'm out here doing it and have all the spaciousness for myself, just vibing with the plants, the clouds passing overhead, the sun rising over the mountain, and my dogs that are like my besties. And like not seeing any buildings or anything synthetic and or artificial that's kind of contaminating my field of vision. That feels deeply luxurious to me. So I realized we can really recontextualize. Can you hear me? Is my internet connection
Loud
okay?
and clear. You're great.
Okay, good. So we can recontextualize a lot of our understanding about things. And basically it's like we're decolonizing and reappropriating and reclaiming our understanding of certain concepts that we've been fed, that have been highly conditioned with a lot of superimposed connotation that may not necessarily resonate with what we know to be true. So luxury and abundance are two concepts in terms that I've been thinking a lot about, especially since navigating a startup that's focused on holistic luxury travel, right? So that, 5-star is wonderful. Like all of the perks are so great, but at what price do the perks come, and how do you compromise what you're paying in terms of stress and time constraints with what you're getting in return? So it's kind of like adopting a qualitative position over a quantitative position. Like,
Bingo.
yes, I'm driving the 6-figure car to work, but yes, I had to get up with my alarm screaming in my ear and drive through traffic, and I'm going to be at my 9 to 5 at my desk all day. Like, you got to weigh out the options, really, really get clear on priorities.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you framed it to begin, which is, how do I even define what luxury is? Right? One of the things that I love about language is that every word actually has a unique definition to each of us. So I hear luxury and I'm thinking about, I'm going to be in locations that are super unique and interesting. I'm going to be with the kind of people that I want to be with, that we have instant resonation, right? I have a comfortable space. It's like, it feels like decadent. I mean, as an example, you took us on a 4-day cruise down the Nile and we upgraded boats. Surprise! We upgraded to an even better boat, which I couldn't even believe. And the caliber of food, like all the staff, the way that everything was curated.
Though. You're missing the best part. That we jump boats in real time, literally. Okay. Like we literally said bye-bye to one boat and jumped with all of our stuff from one boat to the upgraded boat. That's like,
yes,
that's classic, Tyler. Like, that's the best part. Okay.
That's incredible.
We were like, that one, go.
Well, and what's wild is that you already had me in a perception of such a degree of luxury, right? For me, this was my first cruise experience, actually. So for it to be, in Egypt on the Nile was just profound, with our group of just decadent souls, such beautiful people. I mean, I was floored. And the fact that there was an option that was an upgrade and you guys surprised us with this, like, it was just...
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
That's beautiful. I love how you're resonating with that reframing of luxury. And so in terms of the medicine of transformational experience, right? Again, quality over quantity. So I want to give a couple of examples to try to contextualize and illustrate what do I mean by the medicine of transformational experience. So I've been thinking a lot about my life, about my life story, about all the different things in my life. So I don't know how much you know about my story. So growing up, spent the first 2 decades of my life with some compromised health issues. They were chronic. It was acclimating to subpar health as like the normal, right? And so it wasn't until I got into my 20s where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. There's got to be another way to do this. And I dove full on into studying Ayurvedic medicine, clinical herbalism, nutrition, health and lifestyle practices, panchakarma certification, all these different kinds of yoga trainings, all of that. So, and that began my journey of self-healing. And so over time, I've been able to utilize all of these different tools to heal myself of all these different chronic ailments that I suffered from and reclaim a more optimal state of health now than I experienced in childhood or adolescence, right? So yes, most def. So that's a thing. But then here's the other layers. So then when I look at all of that and I think, okay, what was it? Was it the herbs? Was it the, my diet? Was it all the detox? Like, was it moving to the Amazon? Was it the nervous system repatterning? Like, is it the daily practice? I mean, it's all of those things. But when I really look hindsight, what is it that has, got me from then into where I am now? It's certain sublime experiences that I've had that were really mystical, that were really in communion with something greater than myself and bigger than my own sense of self. And it's those experiences that really charged the battery and helped me to orient the focus from looking externally and looking outside myself to understanding that I just needed to replenish and to charge the battery internally, and everything was already right there. There was no grasping or seeking or need to attain anything outside. That was a huge paradigm shift that occurred. I can't really tell you if there was any one particular moment that made that happen. It was kind of a series of things, a series of experiences. And so I've been thinking a lot about why is it, again, qualitative over quantitative? Why is it that there are people who have been to all the same places I've been to? There are people who've been to more places than I've been to, and still, they're still kind of running the same programming. They're still struggling with a lot of the same stuff that they've been struggling with ad nauseum for a long time. So it's not necessarily about going here, doing that, crossing that off your bucket list. So then what's it about? What is the medicine of transformational experience? Why is it that one person's experience and another person's experience, they could be in the exact same place, is not equal, is not the same? That's interesting. So I've been really thinking about that. And I keep coming back to the qualitative nature of the divine feminine. It's like a chalice. It's cultivating receptivity, right? So how receptive are we to allow ourselves to be deeply touched or deeply impacted by something? That's important, Tyler. And I can tell you this because of the work that I've been doing facilitating retreats worldwide since 2005. So I've worked with probably 5,000 people at this point in time. And
5,000?
Since 2005, I've been in this game. So
incredible.
So I've seen a lot of people and I've noticed a lot of archetypal patterns along the way. And it's not uncommon that people will come and pay you for an experience, for a retreat, for a seminar, for an event, for a program. They'll pay you, you're the facilitator, you're in the seat of the facilitator, and they'll come in and I'm here because I want to heal. I'm here because I want to learn. But let me tell you about me and what I do. And so it's interesting because that kind of orientation is, in my opinion, coming from a cup full perspective as opposed to a cup empty. So if we're coming into a new experience or a new situation and we're already thinking that we are we know what we're going to get out of this, or we have so much that we're bringing into this that there's very little spaciousness to allow that experience into us, to change us, to inform us, to grow us, to level us up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about becoming the empty cup always, no matter what. We don't need to even go anywhere. See, that's the thing. I was thinking about a quote by Hafiz. Do you know Hafiz, Sufi poet?
Unfamiliar.
Persian Sufi. Oh, I'm going to send you something of his. So Hafiz is a Persian Sufi poet that actually comes from the city of Shiraz, which is where my family comes from for like generations and generations and generations in the southeast of Iran. And he's definitely on par with Rumi. And he says something beautiful. He says, I was in need of a pilgrimage, so I sat still in silence for 3 days.
Mm.
So gorgeous. It says so much. It's so simple, but it says so much. That's it. It's like we always think, I got to go somewhere. It's always externally oriented. I got to do this. I got to go there. I got to get that certification, meet that person. It's all outside, but it's not. It's not outside at all. So shifting that orientation.
Wow.
So I also think of it from another kind of analogy, the analogy of, say, like surfing. I'm not a surfer. I'm a swimmer. I like to body surf in the ocean. So let me give you an example. So as you know, I just got back from Egypt. I was on site for about 7 weeks this time. And what was really special, Ty, was that I got to bring my 10-year-old daughter, Nahal, for her 10th birthday, which is coming up in July. But it was an opportunity to celebrate 10 years with my daughter. And she has a great interest in Egyptology. So I had the good fortune to bring her and her teacher over there, right? And set us all up, the whole nine.
Her teacher?
You know? Yeah. So Nahal,
Like-
just to give you some... So let me give you some
school
background.
teacher?
So yes. So Nahal doesn't go to like a regular school setting. Nahal, we have a homestead here in the Peruvian Amazon. She goes to school in a tree house that we built for her in a matapalo tree, in a Amazonian master plant, huge tree that is next to our home. She doesn't wear shoes. She doesn't brush her hair. But she's got this incredible like school and like learning tree house. Like it's beautiful, that she goes to every day. And she has teachers that come here and they teach her. So she has this one teacher that's been working with her for a few years who's an incredible woman. She's French. She's got a PhD in linguistics. She's extremely open-minded. We really resonate a lot on our perspective of decolonizing education and child-led learning. So she's just a great mentor for Nahal. So I had the ability to bring her and my daughter with me. But here's the point of all of it. So I had this whole agenda about why I was even going to Egypt for 7 weeks to begin with. Now, that agenda fell apart. When I got there, I was like, what am I even doing here? Like, why did I make all this effort and like go to this extent? And like, this isn't even working out. And then I allowed myself, like a good surfer does, to kind of like read the tide and read the wind and read the directionality and to pivot accordingly. Yeah. So being flexible, being adaptable, knowing when to pivot, learning to read pulse and be able to observe emerging trends and to kind of catch those trends as you would catch a wave that was rising and to ride that. So this is the power or medicine of transformational experience. So what happened there? It was next level. I had an incredible experience with my daughter. Highly recommend, if you have any possibility, to travel with your daughter as much as possible at every stage in her development, or anyone that's listening, travel with your kids, no matter how you do it, just do it, because it helps to break us out of the mundane monotony of, did you brush your teeth? Did you wash your, all that kind of stuff, and really just drop in with each other as people, and to be able to like witness each other as people in our own individual stages of development and to connect there. That's what's up, right? Is that deep, because I mean, this is our blood kin. Like, this is the opportunity to connect so deeply. And that's why they chose us, right? And so we're rewriting all of those scripts moving forward from like all the ancestral trauma and healing that we're doing from previous generations that did not have this ability. They didn't have this luxury that we currently have, right? So we can only attain that luxury if we see the opportunity for that. Otherwise, we keep defaulting and running the old patterns, running the old operating system.
Which is that feminine principle of the empty vessel. Always being open to learning, always being receptive to what happens, and
to the
even
winds of
hyphenating
changing.
all ways, right? All ALL
Absolutely.
hyphen ways.
Yes, always. But we can't walk all ways. We still have to choose, right? So
We can only walk one way.
So it's nice to have options as long as it's not too overwhelming. And so how do we make the right choice when there's all the ways, all the pathways that are laid out in front of us, right? Because then it's like, what do I choose? That's why it's really important, again, coming back to the feminine principle, cultivating spaciousness. Pause, slow it down, drop down a few decibels, because from there, you're operating from a more resourced place, a more intuitive place. It's not just the mental vacillation. It's a more guttural, heart-centered, intuitive place that we can operate from. And then we can choose the way that is the most aligned with our divine timeline.
Shoo!
Yeah. So Nahal and I made memories for life.
Analogy.
Let me tell you I'll just give you a couple of snapshots. And so sometimes when we're laying in bed at night and we're just like kind of decompressing from the day, I'll be like, hey, do you remember we were talking the other day about when we were in Middle Egypt and we went to the tomb of Akhenaten. We visited the city of the sun. Do you know Akhenaten? Have you heard of him?
I've heard of, but I'm not too familiar.
We'll take that conversation onto another podcast. So Akhenaten, when we actually focus fully on Egypt and Kem. So Akhenaten is the heretic pharaoh. He is the one that has the elongated skull, him and his entire family. He broke completely from the conventional theology and conventions of the whole political dynamic at the time, and just created something from nothing, created something completely new. And nobody understands this. So I got a lot of download about all of that. So I took Nahal there. I've been traveling Egypt for 24 years. This was the first time I got to go to this place, right?
Wow.
And so I brought my daughter with me. It's in the middle of nowhere. And so we were talking about when we were on site at this place and we went to have lunch at these people's house, and we were talking about like the cheese that they made from their goats, and like it was fermented to perfection, and they made this like solar oven and like cooked bread made out of corn, and we were eating like corn solar bread with like goat cheese in like the ruins of where like Akhenaten and Nefertiti lived, you know?
Wow.
And so this is the power or medicine of transformational experience. Like that is a seed in her consciousness, in her field, that will have long-ranging, long-lasting implications into the future in all timelines and directions. And like that, I just sprinkled seeds everywhere in my daughter's field. I'll give you another little nugget. So we're in Karnak. Remember Karnak?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. So I took Nahal, and Nahal just she's blonde and blue-eyed, and she just got the red carpet rolled out for her everywhere. I mean, people were just like, Nahal, and people call me Om Nahal, Nahal's mom, right? Like, I don't even have a name. I'm just Nahal's mom, And they actually call me Dr. Nahal's mom. It's cute, right? And so we were on site in Karnak. It's hilarious, Tyler. And so we were on site in Karnak, and we got into all the places that are usually not on the tourist beaten track. You know, we got taken to this place and this place and the other place, and communing in all of these different places. And so we were in this place where there's like 7 consecutive portals inside of each other in one area. And then in the other area, there's a place that has like 7 ankhs. So I was in the room, or in the area with the 7 portals, doing a meditation there. And Nahal went and sat by herself in the room with the 7 ankhs. And after a while, I went to go see her, and she goes, "No, mommy, I'm good here. Go do your thing. I'm doing my thing." So I did. And then, you know, after a while we left and we went on our way, la, la, la. So I went back to Karnak a few weeks after that. And I went back to this place and spent some time in front of those portals. And then I walked into the room where the 7 ankhs were. And there was a very interesting experience that I had there, Tyler. As soon as I walked into that space, it was empty. But it wasn't empty. I mean, there was no one in there, but it wasn't empty. And what I felt immediately was I perceived my daughter's energetic field in that space.
Wow.
I felt her sitting there as she had a few weeks ago. Like there was some kind of like impression emanating from some subtle causal layer of her bodies that was still kind of there in the space. That's not where it ends. This is where it gets really kind of far out there. So I perceived that. I entered into the space. I connected with that etheric causal element from my daughter's field. And immediately something happened. It wasn't mental at all. All of a sudden, it was almost like I was dumping files mentally or something. I don't know how to describe it, except it was like going through these different archives or files of different like toxic or low vibrational interrelational patterning, particularly between men and women. And I was like clearing them from her field there in this room of 7 ankhs. It happened so fast. It happened without any thought whatsoever. And then it was over. And when it was over, my first thought was, is that it? Did that actually work? Are we done? Do I need to do anything else? And it was just like, it wasn't me at all. You know, it just happened like that. And so now it's like, okay, let's see how that plays out in her life. Like, was that real? Was I able to like clear generations and generations of toxic interrelation, and not just generations of like our lineage, but like the collective's interrelational lower vibrational patterns. What if she was able to operate from a place where she didn't have to do the healing work of disengaging from all of that? What if she was operating from a clear slate? What would that be like? Can you imagine?
And curious, what's your perspective of her presence? Does she operate from that perspective, or do you feel from a fresh perspective without the baggage of prior lineage?
Very much
or do
so.
you feel that there's still some?
Very much so. She very much operates like that in general. I mean, I don't know if you know human design, but she's a reflector.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that
Wow, that's
system?
a rare one.
So she's a reflector. I know. So I'm always very careful about like the kind of people that she's around, because she's highly sensitive to impressions. I mean, we all are, but reflectors are supposedly particularly sensitive to impressions. So she actually asked me a question last night let's talk about like story time, right? She goes, "So who's Jesus Christ?" I was like, you're 10 and you're asking me that question. And then I thought, well, I guess it would be my job to, I can't expect somebody else to fill these blanks in. Like, I'm okay, where to start? So we had quite a long conversation about, zooming out to a very big picture perspective. We talked about the 3 Abrahamic religions and what they believe. We talked about the way the Roman Church brought religion to what they considered to be the New World, which was not the New World. That was the Americua continents, and how that impacted and influenced the cultures in this area of the world. We talked about the continents that came before this continent, Atlantis, Lemuria. I mean, it got big picture, Tyler. This was bedtime story. Yeah. So again, transformational experience. You never know where it's going to come from. You never know when it's going to hit you. That's the thing. Like, so I actually have been thinking about this. So I was thinking, okay, what prevents us from having these opening us ourselves up to have these kinds of transcendent, sublime, mystical experiences that really help to shift deeply our perspective on our worldview, our personal cosmological worldview. Like, what primes the train for this? What prevents us from doing this? Is it our agendas? Is it our motivations? Is it our expectations? Is that what prevents us from having these deeper, transcendent experiences? And so I thought a bit about that, and I realized I don't think it's about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't necessarily think it's about like not having expectations or not having an agenda or not having motivations. I mean, imagine if we had no motivations, what would get us up and moving every day, you know?
Right.
I think it's more about cleaning that up. And so really being very objective to looking at where are the unhealthy or self-serving motivations or the narrow-minded aspects of our agenda, you know, that are not aligned with the holistic. So I think it's not necessarily about like not having expectations of something. Which by the way, is that even possible? Like, I have no expectations whatsoever. Like, is that even possible? Like, you don't have any expectations that you're even gonna like step outside your door and like not have an accident. Of course you do. You're definitely expecting to step outside your door and like be able to step on firm ground with one foot and then step on firm ground with the other foot and then again and again and again. So there's always going to be expectations. And that's not necessarily like a negative thing or a hindrance to having a deeper, more profound, impactful experience. But sometimes it's about certain kinds of expectations that really color the picture and limit the possibility of the what could be.
There's
What
so
do you
many
think?
times in listening to you where I just feel like my, oh yeah, and this, and oh yeah, and this. And I'm just pausing and breathing and allowing you to really open up your heart portal. And it's incredible the way that you articulate things and the direction that you're taking us on this journey of transformation. There's so many nuggets along the way. For example, what's coming up for me right now is that perspective literally is everything. And the degree of my connection to what I'm anticipating in the future, right, can be incredibly helpful and healthful if it's spiritually aligned, right, and
You got
aligned
it.
with cause and effect of physics. Or is this a construct of my mind that's been baked in by a certain someone or something in that story, and that's what's holding me back, right? Am I actually in that spirit-centric vantage point of knowing what is my highest calling right now and feeling through my heart, right? That intuitive sense of, oh, I'm ready for anything, because the state of awareness and receptivity would equal transformation, right? I'm not living in a box of what's preconceived and pre-structured. I'm actually being open and flowing with and through the entire universe, which leads me back to your riding the wave metaphor and how beautifully that struck my heart and my mind simultaneously.
I love how you just reflected that right back at me. And what comes to mind right now is this isn't mine, but it's all of ours. Meeting the moment.
Meeting the
Meeting the
moment.
moment. Meeting the moment.
Meeting the moment, baby. That's
And
what
then
it's all
again,
about.
and again, and again.
And which moment is this?
It's the holy now, my dear.
That's right. This moment really is the best moment. You still rocking your bracelet?
Not the one that you gave me because I'm going all gold today, but I actually am, and I was.
That to me is.
Oh wait, which bracelet are we talking about? Which one are we talking about?
It
Remind
says
me.
this moment is the best moment.
Do I have that bracelet?
Yeah, I gave you one in Egypt. And if
No,
you
you gave me a
don't
ring
worry.
that has the Eye of Horus on it.
That's
Do you
true.
remember? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's actually on my altar. It's sitting on the head of Hathor right now. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Which the hieroglyph of Hathor, it's Het Heru. It's the house of Horus. That's what Het Heru. That's her Egyptian name. Het Heru means the house of Horus. So the ring is sitting on the house of Horus. It's so cool, right? The Eye of Horus in the house of Horus. We can definitely speak chem language in another moment because it was powerful over there this time. And at the same time, it was kind of like, I'm telling you, like my entire agenda went up in smoke and like so much stuff went down that was unexpected for me over there. So much pivots happened, but I was able to like ride a very choppy water and come out and feel like I up leveled, literally, not just feel like it, but like me, my health, my business, the directionality of my life, the directionality of the business, the opportunities and doors that are opening for me right now. Like this isn't just, oh, I think or I feel. No, I'm seeing the actual impact on the physical material of being able to ride the wave when the things did not move in the way that I originally had anticipated or saw them moving. This is my current experience.
Meeting the moment.
Meeting the moment and continue to meet the moment. And so there it's like having that regular practice is so crucial because we have to be able to, first of all, continuously work with repatterning the nervous system. So we're able to drop in because that's the thing. That's why, for example, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. You know, I said earlier, like this person can be here having this in this situation, and this person also can be here in this situation, but the experience of both of them is not equal. Why is that? That's really fascinating to me. And I've seen this many times. So, you know, doing the kind of work that I do in the Amazon in a ceremonial context where I am facilitating work for other people and have been doing this for a long time, it's not uncommon in an experience where someone's going to come up to me and I'm deep in my experience and someone will come up to me and be like, I don't feel anything. And I'm like, you don't feel anything because I feel your experience that you're not feeling. This is not uncommon at all. And so what's going on here with that, right? And I also realize it happens too when I'm on site facilitating these kinds of transformational experiences in Egypt, in Tanzania, in different areas of Peru, is I'll be with someone and there's like ritualistic, ceremonial, mystical experience that's happening and someone is not able to drop in. They don't have the spaciousness. They don't have the nervous system regulated to feel safe enough to be able to let the boundaries dissolve and to see what that moment has for them, to imprint on them. Because the other thing too is oftentimes we come at everything with this default, heavily conditioned extractionist attitude, meaning, what am I going to get out of it? What's in it for me? No. And we think that we're going to win like that. No, it's the complete opposite. It's how can I deliver myself in total surrender That's where all the jewels are. That's where all the treasure is. Yeah, it's a complete shift in perspective. People would come down, Ty, because as you know, I have a healing sanctuary here in the Upper Amazon. People come down for all kinds of healing work over the years. I mean, I've had patients that have dealt with, severe mental illness. I've had patients that were in stage 4 cancer diagnoses. I've had all kinds of different clients come through here with a range, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, ancestral, karmic, et cetera, et cetera. And what I would tell people, and again, they come with and it's not blaming, it's just identifying. And one of the things I've realized is one of the keys to healing, do you know what it is? I've realized this. It's understanding. Understanding is a key to healing. The more we can amplify our perspective, meaning it's not just about what I believe in my narrow little corner, but if we can amplify to not just what we believe, to what a lot of other people are believing and feeling, and hold all of that, that amplifies the understanding that we're having, and that engenders so much healing and movement and Shakti to be activated and prana to move, life force energy to revitalize. That's where it's at. And so people come down here with this very kind of unconscious, conditioned, extractionist mentality. Like, I'm going to take this many sessions of plants. I'm going to do this many purges. I'm going to do a diet for this length of time. It's not strong enough. I need more. All of this is operating from a kind of reductionist, materialist, quantitative mentality.
Absolutely. And it just shows how deep that patterning and that ingraining can be in one's operating system.
Absolutely. You got it. So, and what I've told people hundreds of times is it's not about that one session that's going to do it. Like someone's like, if I just had one more. No, it's not like that. It's not just about that one more. In fact, oftentimes, more than often, it's not about more, it's about less. It's about subtracting, not adding. It's about creating the spaciousness to allow what you already intook to expand itself within your field of being and your consciousness, and to do its work, its alchemical, it's alchemizing within your being. And so oftentimes, I can tell you hundreds of times I've told this to clients, it's about a shift in perspective. And you can't acquire that by any kind of forceful means. Like, you're not going to conquer a shift in perspective because you took this many times, this many plant medicines, or that you dieted this many plants. It's not quantitative. You can't even pray your way into that. That's not going to work either. You just need to surrender and stop grasping and let go.
Can you double click on that? Because the concept of surrender, I think especially in Western culture, is associated with weakness or subservience.
That's how deep the conditioning runs, isn't it? That we are automatically going to have an abhorrence towards anything that we consider to be weak. But let's talk about weakness for a minute. I would say more than weak, it's what engenders a kind of vulnerability. And vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is strength. It's being able to move into our places of vulnerability, to embrace them, and to take it a step further. You really want to like level up in terms of courage, is to be able to show your vulnerability, to share that with other people rather than hiding it from yourself and everybody else, to share that, to operate from that level of transparency. That's where we really are meeting the moment, and that we are in a place of surrender where the magic and the, if you want to call it divine orchestration, this kind of intelligence that's beyond the mind, that's much vaster, then we're acknowledging that we are not the greatest intelligence here, that we are not who is in control, and that we are not
what knows best. And that when we acknowledge that, then we actually are stepping into a place of vulnerability, and we are stepping into a place of true strength and leadership from the heart. Yes, that's real strength. That's how we are redefining it in the new earth that we are birthing. And anyone that wants to keep grasping onto being in control, they're going to see what happens to anything that tried. Like, watch when a tsunami hits a brick wall, right? Or like when hurricane winds hit something that is inflexible.
Ooh.
No. Let yourself be taken. Let yourself be taken. Yes. That's where true pivot, true shift in perspective, magic, and medicine of transformative experience occurs.
100%.
Yes.
100%. So, as you're defining and describing this new earth, first off, perspective, right? That is key. As you're describing and defining somebody in resistance to a journey and thinking quantitatively, it was interesting to witness what was coming up for me as I was feeling into those points of resistance and where I've had them in my own journey and where I continue to have points of resistance. It feels without a sense of something greater that's the only thing that's allowed, right? My physical mind then believes that it's essentially God, right? However we want to define that, infinite intelligence, the connective tissue of all of consciousness. And therefore, all I have is this vessel and this one experience. And so if I don't protect, quote unquote, right, secure, quote unquote, build armor and walls, then it's all for naught, right? And that higher perspective vantage point, that there is actually an energy, a guidance system, a God, whatever it is that the person, identifies with at that beyond self state. That's for me what's allowed trust to deepen, vulnerability to deepen, because I am just a conduit, not just that feels minimizing, but this physical vessel, like this is my temple for this experience of source, of soul, of spirit, to be in physical form and to have these, like laughter. I'm curious your take on this too, but I've heard that a lot of these other dimensional beings, right, or other density beings, it can't even be around like laughter. It's such a huge amount of energy. And that's something here on this earth in 3D that we just get to experience. And it's such a unique and fun aspect, right? Because I can laugh or I could cry at just about anything that's emotionally intense. So we get to choose in that moment, right? Sometimes the tears are what it takes for me to transmute that old story, that old pattern, right? And actually drop back into the heart. And that heart is magnetic, right? If the thoughts are
Yes.
electrical that we're sending out, right, to whatever it is, all that is. And then we're receiving that information back through the heart. And so as you're describing this process of opening up and becoming qualitative, it does feel like it's more and more led from the heart.
That is the source. The heart is the temple of source that dwells within. So I love what you're reflecting back to me, because what it is demonstrating to me is your own level, Tyler, of receptivity, of being able to take in something and to allow it to just alchemize within you and then to reflect back, which is not a regurgitation or an imitation. It's alchemizing with your own inner wisdom. And then you're reflecting what you've received. And that is where it's at. So something, this is a little off topic, but I think that you would resonate. So in terms of electric and magnetic, electromagnetism is something that is very, very interesting, has been for a long time. Back when I was fully in practice as an Ayurvedic clinician,
I had done a ton of research about EMF and health benefits, or health, I should say, the health mal effects of being around artificial EMF. I taught workshops on it. I taught people to do different kinds of like Marma therapy sequences to allow the life force energy to move through stagnant channels in the body, to be able to get the electromagnetic field of the body functioning optimally, earthing, sun gazing, bathing in moving springs, and breathing negative ions and all of that kind of stuff. So that was something that was very interesting for a long time to me. And I taught about that and I still practice it. But what's interesting too is about like the double tube toroid, which is how all electromagnetic fields of all bodies operate. That's the kind of template configuration. It's how the electromagnetic field of the heart moves. It's how the electromagnetic field of the earth moves. It's how the electromagnetic field of the sun moves. It's all moving in this kind of double tube toroid. So it's like, if you look at the double tube toroid, it's continuously like, it's a continuous feedback loop that is feeding in, and then it's watering out. So it's feeding in and watering out, and it's funny because when I was with Nahal in Egypt, we were in this place called the Valley of the Whales, and it's an ancient seabed. It's the seabed of the Tethys, which is the grandmother of the Mediterranean. So you're in the middle of the desert, and you're at the bottom of what used to be a sea, great sea, and there's huge cetacean fossils everywhere, strewn about the desert. And these cetaceans are so old that they're extinct. They're like dinosaur cetaceans, dinosaur whale
What is a
fossils.
cetacean?
The cetaceans are the whales, the dolphins, the porpoises, very intelligent mammalian beings. Some people think that the cetaceans originally come from the Pleiades. And so there are extinct cetacean fossils of huge kinds of whales that don't exist anymore, that existed when this sea was a sea. And so we're out there walking amongst these fossils in the desert under the heat of the rays of Ra, me and my daughter. And she's asking me about climate change because she's concerned. She's 10 and she's concerned, as she should be. And I don't try to feed this fear in her, but intuitively she knows that we are arriving to a kind of finite, exhaustible, unsustainable way. They know. The kids know this already. And so she's asking me about climate change and how climate change occurs. And just by chance, at that point, we were getting hit with some really intense solar weather. So I don't know if you've been keeping up on like solar weather in the last 6 months, but the sun has been undergoing some very intense changes lately. There's like a huge hole on the sun's surface and massive upgrade in intensity of coronal mass ejections. And so we're getting these like X storms, which is why you've probably been hearing about people seeing the aurora borealis as far south as like Utah.
Yeah,
it's because
it was supposedly
of the
even
intensity.
hit in Texas.
Of course,
I
you're
didn't get to see it.
You're at the same latitude practically. So the thing is, why? It's because we're getting all this intense electromagnetism, solar electromagnetism that's hitting us. And this is hitting us on a physical level, and that's why you're seeing like the lights in the sky. But what's this doing energetically? So this is what me and my daughter are jamming about while we're walking in the desert looking at extinct whales. Yeah. Talk about the medicine of transformational experience and how these kinds of experiences seed something in the field that then they may not germinate for a while. They may not even germinate in this lifetime. But when they germinate, it's going to be so pivotal in how the trajectory unfolds. That, my friend, is what I'm very interested in these days, is really understanding how to utilize and wield and integrate the medicine of transformational experience. So just to kind of like fast forward about like climate change, electromagnetic field, double tube toroid, movement. So I'm explaining all of this to my 10-year-old who understands it and grasps this kind of stuff very easily. And so I was explaining how sometimes climate change occurs over millions of years, and sometimes it occurs like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because cataclysmic change, I mean, it's always happening. Nothing stays the same. That's why to think that it's a choice to be flexible and adaptable is idiocy. It's not a choice. It's what is. So either we align with what is, or game over. We opt out. That's it. It's not a choice. I mean, I guess it's a choice if you're like into choosing suicidality, but if you're choosing life, then it's just about cultivating flexibility and adaptability to the most nuanced, subtle, elevated degree possible.
100. And what is it that kids do? Let's go all the way back to like when Nahal was 1, when Tula was 1.
They're growing. They're changing.
They're
all the time.
100% adaptable. They're being 100% present. They're not stuck in their mind. Anything that comes up, the emotions, they all surface. Like they're just so here. And the rate of growth is astronomical. It's insane.
Overnight sometimes.
Yes. Relative to my standards, I mean, it reset what I believed was possible in witnessing this through my daughter.
Yes. I love the reflections that you're reflecting back at me, Tyler. Just really beautiful. Really enriching, very expansive. Yeah. There's another piece to the medicine of transformational experience I want to share. And so this is something I've thought about for a long time with my own personal journey with medicine work, which is about, I look at it, and also as a nutritionist. So I look at it from the perspective of nutrition. And when you eat a meal, why doesn't everyone get the same benefit from their food? Why doesn't everyone experience food? It's the same. Their impressions. Why is it that one person eats a meal, the other person eats a meal, and they're not both getting the same out of it on any level? What's that about? So as a nutritionist, I would say that's about bioavailability. But let's break that down a little bit. What's that about, right? And so this is something I've thought a lot about with my own personal journey with medicine work and as a facilitator in that field as well, which is about our ability to have an experience and to be able to digest that experience, to be able to assimilate that experience into our being, to be able to absorb the nutrients of that experience, and then to eliminate the byproduct, that which does not serve.
That just hit me so deep. That's ridiculous. I have not, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. And the more that I'm paying attention to my internal landscape and exactly that, what am I feeding? What is the information that I'm feeding to this vessel? And, to what degree I feel like I have, plenty of parasites in me. The more that I've been learning about different cleanses, etc., I've been blown away. And I literally, I'm like 11 p.m. and I want sugar. I'm like, that's not me.
There's a little creature that's using you as their host to get what they need. They are feeding off of you.
We're doing the same thing with Earth.
Until we stop. Until we decide that we don't want to be, yes, exactly. Until we adopt regenerative mindset and regenerative thought and regenerative word and regenerative action, then we're just parasites. Until we do that, we are just parasites. Yeah. Feeding off a host. 100%, Tyler.
Real quick, I would love to hear your perspective around all the solar rays and the electromagnetic fields that are emitted and the rate of change. I mean, Starlink, for example, was surprised that they didn't lose any of the constellations because this is the most amount of solar radiation that they've experience since launching. And I heard as much as like from the 1800s, this was the largest
Yes, I've
solar
heard that
flare
too.
experience.
Yeah. Since we've been like recording it. So yeah, I mean, this is not something to take lightly. This is something that we, I think as humans here on Earth at this point should be contemplating, because personally, I don't really believe that anything's happening outside of us. So if there is a kind of evolutionary metamorphosis that like individuals are undergoing, that's perhaps there is a kind of critical mass that's really starting to be engendered. And that critical mass isn't just happening in a like one unified species, because we live in an interdimensional web of consciousness. And so that evolutionary metamorphosis is happening on the level of the individual, the level of the collective, the level of the planet, the level of the system, the level of like all the celestial beings that inhabit this multiverse that is our home, that is constantly in flux and motion, just like we are, right? So one of the greatest lessons I've learned from chem, which I am a perennial student of chem and of Hermetic philosophy, this lifetime, the next, before, onward, ad infinitum, is that we live
So just a little impact on you, huh?
Tiny, right? But it took me 20 years before I realized how much, like I had my first interface with chem in this lifetime in 2001. And then it took me 20 years before I realized how deep that impact was and far reaching, meaning how much an effect it had on the trajectory of my life and my consciousness. It took me 20 years to just be like, like it's been guiding me this whole time. I didn't even realize it. And so chem, one of the greatest teachings of chem, and this comes through Thoth, is that Egypt is a holographic fractal template of it's a holographic reflection of the above below fractal template. Let's put it like that. Egypt is a holographic reflection of the above below fractal template, meaning everything without mirrors the within, everything above mirrors the below, everything on the micro mirrors the macro ad infinitum. So when we're talking about evolutionary metamorphosis on a cellular level, on an individual level, on a planetary level, on the level of the cosmos that is in a process of evolutionary metamorphosis. That's really exciting, isn't it? And so these solar storms that we are really only like just we have a very minute understanding, even on a physical level, of what this means and the implications. Because what I was talking to my daughter about in the desert is I was talking about the different spheres, like the magnetosphere, the stratosphere, all the different layers of spheres, like like we have bodies. Yeah. And like we go from like the densest body to the most subtle or causal level body. So does the earth, right? The spheres of the earth. And then it goes into the earth. So you have like the, like the outer level, like the crust, and then down into the core of the earth. You have all of these different layers. And so the solar radiation is passing through the different, bodies into the different layers, and it's affecting the core. What is the core? It's a magnet. Right? And so it's like
the toroidal field is the same. That is the magnetic field. That is the shape of it, similar to an apple, correct?
Yes, similar to an apple, exactly. But it's the electromagnetic field. And it's also what the field of the heart produces as well, as far as I know. Stephen Herod Buhner wrote a really beautiful book about this. I'll send you a link for that.
Stephen
Herod Buhner. He's awesome.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. There were 2 book recommendations I thought of for you. We'll take this off camera and talk about this. So yeah, we are this serious process that we are in, I would say. And so the best service we can do for ourselves is to acknowledge the process and not suppress it, avoid it, distract ourselves, pretend like it's not happening. The idea that everything's going to stay the same is death. That's impossible.
That is literally death.
That's death.
Life is perpetual change, evolution. Okay,
Just observe around us. Everything is in a state of flux, always.
100%, all the time. So with the electromagnetic pulses, how do you intuitively feel, or what have you noticed of the effects and any sort of information that you've gathered from this transmission from our raw, right? Our logos.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how far out there you get with your people, but on the Ascend podcast.
Go as far as you feel comfortable.
Yeah, there's no limit to that, Tyler.
That's right.
Thing. That's the thing, I'll like potentially dematerialize into like a, blob of atoms at some point in time, because that's how far out there it gets.
Perpetually in movement.
So the other day, okay, as you know, everything's in movement. So the other day, there was a very interesting alignment that happened. So the Earth came into alignment with one of the stars in the Pleiadian cluster called Alcyone. Now, in Egyptian astronomy, and the temple priests have been keeping astronomical records for a very long time. When Herodotus came from Greece to Egypt in the 1st century AD and asked Egyptian priests how long they had been keeping astronomical records, he got various responses from between 50,000 years, this is at 1st AD, to between 500,000 years.
What?
Okay?
Yeah, but Aubrey, I thought that the world was 5,000 years old.
That's what they've taught us, isn't it? Isn't that what we've been taught? But along with, I don't know about you, but everything else that I've been taught is slowly deconstructing itself and like rematerializing in a completely more expansive, more holistic, more integrative way. So I'm okay
100%.
with all of that.
Even the King's List, right? Going back 30,000 years. Like that's
right.
In and of itself. What more evidence do we need? Then we have geological information that's happening, like watermarks on the Sphinx that, date approximately 12,500
to the last
years
ice age
ago.
Or the last cataclysmic event, the last either celestial summer or celestial winter. So if we're talking about progression, the precession of the equinoxes, which is the 26,000 year cycle. So all the age of each of the ages of the zodiac. So currently we're coming out of the Piscean age, moving into the Aquarian age, lasts around 2,000 years. So going through one round of that celestial zodiac equates to about 26,000 years. That's considered to be the precession of the equinoxes. And the celestial summer and celestial winter are considered to be points on that trajectory when cataclysmic events happen. In the celestial summertime, it's cataclysmic fires. And in the celestial wintertime, it's cataclysmic floods. And so, yes, the Sphinx has definitely been around since at least the last time we had one of those seasons hit us.
Wow.
So about the sun in Alcyone.
50,000 to 500,000 years of astrology being kept.
Records.
Of astrological records being kept. Are these in the form of hieroglyphs?
We don't really know. This is actually like what people there's, as far as I know, and I'm not, like a trained, I'm simply an avid amateur Egyptologist. But as far as we know, which most, like the hieroglyphs, that's a whole other thing we can talk about if you want, but because we don't really know what hieroglyphs mean, how to interpret them fully. But what we know is coming secondhand to us from like Greeks that went to Egypt and recorded the information that they received when they were there interfacing, to the extent that they were allowed in and what they were being told by different priests and priestesses when they were there. So
What?
yeah. So what they learned from the Egyptian astronomers at that point was that they considered that our sun, Ra, had a mother. What does that mean to them? That means they knew at that point, Tyler, that our sun was revolving around something, was orbiting around something. And they identified that celestial being as Alcyone. Alcyone is one of the seven sisters. It's one of the Pleiadian stars. Okay. And
Alcyone?
so Alcyone. And so recently, so I'm an avid investigator. And so recently I did some research, and indeed science has corroborated that they found that the sun is actually in orbit around Alcyone. So what does that mean? I mean, it means a lot of things. There's a lot of implications here. One of the implications is that we are kin to the Pleiadian cluster. They're like our distant cousins, actually. That's one thing. That's interesting. So what, we're Pleiadians, essentially? That's a very interesting thing to contemplate. So just recently, like a few days ago, the sun came in direct alignment with Alcyone. Now, this is not like Pluto and Uranus coming into an alignment, which happens, I don't know what, every 20 years or something like that. This takes a lot longer for this alignment to happen. And this just happened just recently. So on that morning, I was out in my garden, sun gazing, and I had made myself a plant bath, as I very often do as part of my self-care practices of being a vegetalista living in the upper Peruvian Amazon. And I had made a rose bath and was about to take my rose bath. And when I was sun gazing, there was like some clouds that were blocking like the direct sight between me and the solar rays. But when I started to take my bath, those clouds cleared. And it was like the rays of the sun were coming directly into my ocular portals. And there was some kind of information that I could feel that was coming from beyond the sun. It was almost as if the sun was acting as a kind of window, portal, doorway to energies, cosmic energies that were beyond it, that were coming through it, and that I was accessing through my orbital portals. I was taking that information into my body. I was then singing the information out and projecting it into my bath. And then I was bathing myself in my field with that information. And none of this is planned. I couldn't even possibly conceptualize any of this. I don't even still know any of that, what that means. I just know the experience. And I can tell you it was impactful. The medicine of transformational
how
experience.
would you define the information
we just need to meet the moment
that was being transmitted? Could you repeat that?
I'm waiting for the rest of your question. How would I define the information that's being transmitted? Was there anything else?
Yes. So from Alcyone being in alignment with the sun, right? And again, this goes back to our original thesis of meeting the moment and being in the eternal and perpetual now and treating it as such. There's no way that you could plan something like this. And if my mind was planning something like this, it's not going to unfold in any way like my mind believes. So, wow, kudos to just having good self-care practices as well. And, giving yourself that space of regeneration and clarity. And so I'm curious with the significance of this alignment, right? The mother sun relative to the daughter sun, relative to coming through your ocular portals, transmuting that information, feeling it all go through the water. What is it that shows up for you intuitively? Was it a felt sense? Was there anything that comes through that you could describe?
I could tell you that it was huge. It felt macro, which I don't try to process with my small walnut-sized processor. and prefer to just allow that information to alchemize in the field and within the different layers of my body, which I believe it's still currently percolating and doing, and trust that that's going to express itself through whatever like thoughts, creative, which Tyler, there's been this heavy fire hydrant open gush of creativity flowing through me since I came back from Chem a month ago.
Let's go. Let's glow. Let's grow.
I literally wake up and I'm just like, for hours every day. I'm just like, no, it's like that. It's so on. And so I think it's all part of that, you know? And so just allowing ourselves to be the channel, to be the vehicle, to be the instrument, you know? And so trying to understand, and I don't want to limit it by trying, like, there's an expression we say in my family and in my lineage: don't try to put the big box in the little box. Put the little box in the big box. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So don't try to like conceptualize the macro divine orchestration. It's impossible. And we'll just do ourselves a disservice. And the only reason we try to do that anyway is because we're still in this kind of neurotic conditioning where we don't feel safe and secure until we think we understand something, and we've like limited it, put it inside of a little box, and then like archived it. And then we feel okay. We feel safe. And we're like, I understand that. Next. No, we don't understand anything. And that's beautiful.
There's so much wisdom in what you just shared.
Thank you. So, transformational experience.
Yeah, for me, I'm sitting here like, oh, but can you put words for the little brain, the intellectual mind, to wrap itself around, to give context of this massively, transformational experience? You're like, yes, everything that I've shared thus far is has been influenced from this experience.
You got it. Yeah. And you too, because you're not separate from that either. So it's just a matter of tuning in, and everyone else who's listening here too is not separate from that experience. None of us are separate from the experience of anyone else or from this big experience that's unfolding itself through us that we are dreaming into being. So the idea that we are, and that's something that happened to her and not to me, that is an illusion that we need to dissolve. So we can allow ourselves to breathe and inhale and to feel the medicine of that experience, even if it wasn't your personal experience where it happened to your physical body. It's irrelevant.
Wow.
It's in the field. So pick the fruit and enjoy the fruit. So 3 R's for transformational experience. Replenish our inner vitality. Replenish our inner vitality. Reorient or reaffirm our North Star.
Reorient or reaffirm our North Star.
Reconnect to the essence that is the essential nature of our being.
Reconnect to the essence, which is the essential nature of our being.
Replenish, reorient or reaffirm, and reconnect. So basically, it's nothing external to us. It's all internal to us. Remember, as Hafiz was saying, I needed to go on pilgrimage, so I sat still in silence for 3 days. So it's not about what we are adding. We don't need to like run out and like join this or do that or pay for that or any, like all of that are remnants of a outdated kind of paradigm that is in the process of being completely deconstructed before our eyes. Yeah. So what is the reorientation, the reframe, the new perspective? Subtract.
Yes, Aubrey. What is?
Take away. Make space. Don't fill the space. Just create the space. And work on the nervous system so that it's not constantly like trying to grasp onto something because it feels so insecure. Placating the nervous system to allow it to just not
react, so we can just be in the spaciousness and something will arise. And whatever arises is gold. It's gold for us. But without like expectation, it needs to be on this kind of time frame. It hasn't come yet. Just breathe and like, breathe those negative ions and like put your feet on the earth. Yeah.
Wow. And you've given us so many jewels along the way of your own practices. I'd love to hear a summation for somebody that might be beginning their journey, right?
Okay.
And is maybe not too familiar with the subtle energies, being able to listen to the body with clarity. You just talked about earthing, putting our feet on the ground, right? That being very important. Self-care, like how you're doing the baths, and you're not just doing a bath, but you're doing like this beautiful bath where you have like flowers and essences that are in there that speak to your soul.
I
What
think
else
I had
comes to
some
mind?
lake water from the sacred lake at Karnak in that bath as well.
What? You brought water back from Karnak?
I did. Yeah, someone gave it to me. And I shared it with everyone. Yeah. So I've been putting it in like my bath in the house. I've been putting it in the plant baths. Again, it's not more like that's the thing too, is some people are like, I don't have the schedule for all of this. I don't have the time. How do you have the time for all of these things? I mean, for me, this is my priority, and my life and lifestyle and livelihood have fallen in line with what my priorities are. And that's taken decades to put all of that into place,
Mm.
So that doesn't happen overnight, but it's just about what are your priorities. So that like getting clear with that and breathing a lot and just leaving a lot of space for contemplation, because contemplation is a lost art. Contemplation is where like all this kind of digestion, assimilation, absorption, and elimination of experience happens. So for example, I came back, it's about 30 days since I came back from Chem. This was huge. I mean, it always is. I've told you that every time I go, it is a major up level in my life. This is huge, Tyler. There were huge timelines that collapsed and expanded and like reoriented, pivoted onto different time. Like I'm not going where I was going before Chem. I'm going somewhere else. And there was just a lot of stuff that happened in order for that transition to be put into place. That's huge. And I'll talk to you about that offline in another moment. But since I got back a month ago, I have barely left my home. I've been spending a lot of time by myself. I rest when I need to. I've been trying to really kind of like keep work pretty minimal. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own business. So to some degree, I have a team that I run, but to some degree, I have that ability to some degree. So I've been trying to create a lot of spaciousness in the morning, at night, digital detox. There was absolutely like no ingestion of anything whatsoever happening. I'm like in post diet. I'm like post dieting Chem energies, basically. So integration, just giving spaciousness for the experience to unpack itself fully in your field. I mean, what happens when you just like hit the ground running and then you're on to the next thing? Indigestion of experiences, then it becomes like just consumption, just pure consumption for consumption, like next, 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 but you didn't actually get the nutrition of it. You didn't know how to work with
Wow.
that.
It feels so inorganic to want to just go on to the next, like what's next, I feel like cats actually give us a great reference point for how to live a more qualitative life, right? They just lounge, just all right, we're just hanging out, resting, and then they play or they go hunt, and they have full energy and catalyzation, and they'll nap throughout the day, periodically, and refill the batteries. Like one of the things I remember reading from the Seth material that Jane Roberts wrote back in the, I think 60s, maybe early 70s, was around changing from an 8-hour sleep cycle to like a 3 to 4, and then having another 3 to 4 hour segment. And what that does, because I believe that when we sleep, we're actually just like our phones, we're plugging in to charge back up our spirit, right? To actually fill up the batteries of this vessel, because this is a reality projection system that I'm, needing the energy to run and interact with all these high energies. And so by doing a 3 to 4 hour main sleep, and then going in and doing another one, it actually blurs between that more spirit-centric world, that energetic-centric world, and the physical world. So it's a way of being more completely aligned with all the energies, right? Being able to pick up more. I'm curious, do you have any feedback on that, or what have you experienced in your life?
2 points about that. So one is in my research about EMF. So when we hit an REM sleep cycle, there are, I can't remember right now, like what kind of cells these are, but these are cells that you need to reach a certain, like if it's like a theta brainwave cycle, that's what is needed for these cells to rejuvenate themselves, to charge back up. So it's like what you're talking about is charging on an energetic level, but there's actually like recharging our cells to reduce oxidation in the body, cellular oxidation, and to be able to amplify the cell's regenesis, essentially, their ability to turn over, to revitalize themselves, right? Anti-aging, right? So that's actually a thing. So to that effect, with like the EMF research, like you don't want to sleep near a modem. You don't want to you want to put your phone on airplane mode. You want to get all kinds of devices away from the space that you sleep in. Like I converted a long time ago, like my bed, like the mattress I sleep on doesn't have like the metal coil springs in it. It's like a natural latex, because when you're sleeping and the electromagnetic field, when there's like, EMF, it's actually getting drawn to the metal in the mattresses. And so that's interfering with the cellular regeneration, basically. It's completely interfering with all of that. So that's just on a physiological level in terms of regenesis. Now, what you're saying about cats is also interesting too, because this is an analogy that I use a lot in the sphere of medicine work. When people are like, so what do I need to do, before a ceremony? Like, how do I need to position myself? Like, what do I do? I always give the analogy of the cat, right? Because I grew up with cats. I actually raise wild cats in the Amazon. I think you know that. I have an ocelot, or
Nice.
he has me. An ocelot has me as his person. I am his human. His
That
name is
is the
Set,
correct
by the
frame
way.
right there.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It's really that. So I spend a lot of time with felines. I'm very familiar with feline energy. And if you spend time around cats, you know that they get into such deep, deep levels of relaxation. But at the same time, they have the ability to maintain awareness and alertness while they're relaxed. So if you've ever seen a cat that's sleeping and like you can see like the ears are moving where they're like picking up sound far off in the distance at like a different like auditory decibel or something like that, and they're registering that, but the body is so relaxed and there's no like reaction to that, but there's a registering of that. So that's what I try to, I use that analogy to help people to understand, like, it's a paradoxical razor's edge that we need to walk of simultaneous relaxation and alertness. Because a lot of times what we think when we think of alertness is that the autonomic nervous system is like contracted, almost like a fight or flight response, like you're like ready for something, and so muscles tense. There's a contraction that's happening. We want the opposite. We want to cultivate total relaxation, but still have that kind of alertness and awareness. That's very paradoxical and requires training over a long period of time, meditation, training, being able to have an effect on like brainwave states and nervous system regulation and endocrine function and thought processes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about priorities, and each of us realizing that this is a very precious, like a human birth is a precious experience that not every sentient being gets to have, and that we get to do with it what we decide. We're stewards of that life. And so it's really up to us as stewards to decide what's important with this precious life. How do we utilize this temple? What's it for? What are we here for? Who are we? What are we here to do? What is this experience about? Otherwise, it's just like nose to the ground, like sniffing out the next piece of cheese, like, no. No, we're like trees. We have like our roots in the ground and we're like reaching our branches to the sky. So it's like the simultaneous connection, the conduit between that's what, Tyler, just to kind of conclude all of this. So as you know, I got back from chem and I was over there with my daughter, but I was also over there closing out the Alchemic Mystery Field School, which is my mystery school. And it was the last chapter. And what I taught on and expounded on while I was there was what I called the Temple Teachings Decoded. And a big piece of the Temple Teachings Decoded had to do with what I call the Anthropos Cosmos template or blueprint. What is that? So
Anthropos Cosmos template.
Template or blueprint. The Anthropos Cosmos blueprint. So what is that? What is the Anthropos Cosmos? The Anthropos Cosmos is humans as the microcosmic image of the macrocosmic cosmos or universe. We are that. And so that's the experience, is just above, so below. We are that conduit between the both. We manifest the micro and the macro within our experience. We're processing all of that. So when you were saying, what is the information that's coming through on these like macrocosmic levels? Like, I'm not quite sure that can be computed through the brain. And if it is, it might take time for the processing to happen, but it's all happening. It's all happening in the field. There's really no separation between your field and my field, or between our field and the field of anyone else that's listening, or the field of like the plants that are outside my window right now, or the tree that's standing sentry right outside my door at this moment, like, or right here, like it's all interconnected information within each other. So just cultivating more spaciousness and allowing ourselves to not have to jump to conclusions, to retrain ourselves to not have to like extract and like get things out of it and have agendas that are on very small-minded timelines, rather than allowing those timelines to dissolve and reorient and align with bigger macro timelines. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Ad infinitum. It keeps going on and on. I mean, this is a conversation like, let's put the bookmark here and like digest, and we can always pick back up and dive back in. And like, having had time to digest the ideas, integrate, absorb, assimilate, eliminate anything that doesn't resonate or doesn't serve or doesn't make sense at this point in the trajectory, and then come back and build on that. Yeah. It's like, that's how you build good quality tissue in the body, Same. It's all the same. The processes reflect each other. There's like certain cosmic laws in this universe, and everything follows those laws. So we best learn them. It would be in our best interest to learn them, because
Otherwise, the laws just keep smacking us around.
Yeah, otherwise you're like swimming upstream. There's no reason for that. Why expend vital life force energy in a way that's, it's not necessary? That can be utilized to magnetize,
Mm, 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 mm.
right?
This
We are
is life force
creators.
mastery. That's right. Coming in hot. Aubrey
Coming in
Bamdad,
hot.
you are ridiculously amazing. Ridiculous isn't even the appropriate word. That's just something that I use a lot. You are such a vivacious and captivating individual with how much contemplation that you've really poured in, right? And allowed that simmering so that what does show up, what does surface via our voice, our energetics, our spirit, our eye contact, that heart position. I feel just privileged, honored, blessed to know you and to be able to keep cultivating these incredible conversations and dynamics. And especially one of the big takeaways that I've received from this experience right now is to
Thank you,
turn
Tyler.
off the physical mind even more. Just turn down that physical mind, have even more trust, put even more faith into the heart, and
Yes.
listen. Really
Thank you. That
listen
was
for
the
the
one word we
intuitive
didn't say
guidance.
until right now. You said it. Faith. Thank you.
Mm,
There were several times in the conversation when I was listening to you or listening to myself where it was like, faith, faith. Like, why is it that we keep grasping? Because we don't have faith. Yeah?
yeah.
Why do we keep thinking that we need to control? Because we don't have faith.
Mm.
Thank you, Tyler. This has been an absolutely marvelous experience, super enlivening, enriching, mutually enriching conversation, as it always is. I think often about some of the great conversations we had while we were sailing down the Nile and the sun was setting. Yet another transformational experience that deeply seeded itself into my consciousness. And here we are continuing to build, and I look forward to more.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so
So,
much.
where can our listener get in touch with you?
Yeah. So these days I've been hanging out in the Argos sphere. So argosdestinations.com. I'll send you the links. And the Argos sphere is really the nexus of where we bring together defining luxury as simplicity. And it's where trends in beauty and fashion and music and gastronomy coinsect and coincide with consciousness expansion and ceremonial practices and regenerative practices. And it's a nexus. So that's really where I've been hanging out and looking forward to the next one.
That is incredible. All right, listener, if you do not have enough of this Aubrey experience in your life, this energy, go to argosdestinations.com and see what it feel into what it could be like to go on a transformational experience. I mean, you got to have an hour and a half with this incredible being right now. Imagine what it's going to be like to have a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, what in sacred sites throughout the entire world. Oh my goodness. Such a privilege, such an honor. Thank you, Aubrey.
The honor's all mine, Tyler. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day.